You want to like read it curled up in bed on a fall day when it's raining outside and then watch a Twilight movie after. Oh hey, welcome back. For those of you who have never been here before, what's up? Glad you made it, glad you're here. Welcome to the family. In today's video, we are selling our souls, and that's fine as long as it's for a good cause, like books, right? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about books that I would sell my soul to read again for the first time. There are some books in your life that are such an amazing experience reading them for the first time that you're like, the fact that I'll never be able to read this again for the first time is depressing. So those are going to be the books that I'm talking about today. Some books that I would literally give it all for to read again for the first time. So some of these are some of like my favorite books of all time, but not all of them. Some of them I really enjoyed, but like I wouldn't even say were like my favorite books of all time. But still, the reading experience was so fun that I would want to do it again. And that's pretty much the intro. Let's hop into it. The first book is Supreme Courtship by Christopher Buckley. And the reason that I would want to read this book again for the first time is because it's so outrageous and so hilarious that I just want to experience all the insanity again. I'll just read you the first sentence on the back. It says, U.S. President Vanderdamp is so angry at the Senate for rejecting his Supreme Court nominees that his next choice is a doozy. Judge Pepper Cartwright, star of the most popular reality TV show, Courtroom 6. So it's about this president of the United States who has been nominating so many different people to be on the Supreme Court, and the Senate keeps rejecting every single one, that he gets so mad he's like, you know what, F it. I am just going to nominate this girl. She's basically like Judge Judy, except for she's from Texas, and so she's like this southern bombshell. And it's so funny. The whole book is like this hilarious satire, and you just follow like the process of her becoming a Supreme Court justice. It's also hilarious because the president like literally does not want to win the next election. He absolutely is done being the president, so part of the reason he does this is because he just does not want to be elected again. And the book is hilarious. Like, I just laughed out loud multiple times. It's a hilarious satire and a comedy just about politics. And you don't even have to know tons about politics to think it's funny. Like, I'm not the most politically versed, but I will say that this book was hilarious either way. So I would love to be able to read it again and just experience the insanity that is this book. Next up, I'm going to hit you with some classic literature, and that is Persuasion by Jane Austen. So this book, I love it. I think it's my favorite Jane Austen that I've read. When I was reading it for the first time, I was just so invested. The characters are funny. The romance is just heartbreaking. It's written so well. So this book follows a woman named Anne Elliot who was persuaded to give up the love of her life 8 years ago because he was not rich and not of her same social class. And then these many 8 years later, he comes back and he's like a captain in the Navy and he's like super awesome. And she's like, I have loved you for so long. Please love me back. But he's like mad. He's mad that she gave him up when he was poor, but she was persuaded, and she's very like timid, shy girl. She's not like your Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. I think the reason that I would want to read this book again for the first time with no context, with no prior knowledge, is simply because of the letter at the end of the book. I'm not going to say any more about it, but if you know, you know. Like, that letter kills me. I remember reading it for the first time and I was just melting into a pool of tears, of happiness. And so I definitely would recommend this. I think it's a good book also if you have never read any Jane Austen, because it is her shortest one. It's pretty small and it's pretty easy to follow. It's not incredibly difficult, I think. Also, it's really funny. The Elliots, their entire family is just ridiculous, and so they're fun to read about. So this is a great one. I would love to read it again for the first time with just no clue how anything's gonna turn out. Next up, we have The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I really loved this book. Reading this book felt like a warm hug. There were moments I'd be laying in bed reading it and I would have to close the book and like curl up into a little ball and just be like, oh my gosh, That was so good. It really just gives these great vibes, cozy vibes. You want to like read it curled up in bed on a fall day when it's raining outside and then watch a Twilight movie after. Far beneath the surface of the earth, upon the shores of the starless sea, there is a collection of tunnels and rooms filled with stories. The entryways that lead to the sanctuary are often hidden, but those who seek will find. Their doors have been waiting for them. Zachary Ezra Rollins is searching for his door, though he does not know it. When he discovers a mysterious book in the stacks of his campus library, he begins to read and is entranced. Suddenly, a turn of the page brings Zachary to a story from his own childhood. So basically, this guy, Zachary, goes on this quest to find the starless sea, figure out what's going on. When he makes it down there, it's like immaculate vibes, and while he's there, it's just like, I want to be there with him. But then another thing I really loved about this book is that between every chapter, there are other little stories in between each chapter. It's like a fable. And you're reading all these stories and they're all so interesting, and they all like start to connect to each other at the end of the book, and you're like, oh my gosh. But all those little stories are also like such little treasures inside of here, and this whole book is a treasure. It's also just for anyone who loves reading or who loves stories in general. It's like your crack. Here. So the reason I would like to read it again for the first time is simply because I want to experience like the cozy vibes I felt as I was reading this for the first time. Next up, we have A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman. I just loved this story, and I think I would want to just read it again because it made me laugh, and it made me cry, and it made me feel so many things. And I would just love to experience that again. My mom recently listened to the audiobook of this because I've been talking about it on my channel forever, and she was like, let me finally do it, and she was obsessed. She was like, I think that might be my favorite book of all time, and I was like, I know, right? And so this book is about a man named Uwe, and he is just a grump. He's an old curmudgeon, and he's mean to everyone. He's just kind of an ass. But one day, this new family moves in across the street from him, a young couple and their young daughters, and they basically force themselves into his life. And they're like, you know what? You're gonna like us. We are going to become your friends. And he's like, hell no! But what do we think happens? Found family energy, which I love those kind of books. And so generally, this book was just incredibly hilarious. You'll laugh through it, but then you'll also just like cry through the last few chapters. It's so good, and there's not much else to say. Next up, we have The Bane of Your Existence, because I never stop talking about it, and that is The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Mary Ann Schaefer and Annie Barrows. This kind of comes with its own little stipulation of why I would want to read it again for the first time. I would want to read it again for the first time without having seen the movie, because I saw the movie for this book years ago, and I loved it. Like, loved. One of my favorite movies of all time. And then I found this book like a year ago, and I was like, maybe I should read the book because I liked the movie. And then I read the book, and I was obsessed with the book. But as I was reading the book, I still knew what was going to happen, right? Because I had watched the movie. There were enough differences that it was kind of like reading new stories and reading new things, which was nice. But I would just love to experience this book again for the first time without having any prior knowledge. So this is a book about a woman named Juliet Ashton, and she is a writer following World War II. She got really famous writing this book. It's kind of like a comedic book about World War II in order to kind of help people get through the war. She starts this correspondence with these people on the island of Guernsey, which is in the English Channel, British Channel, English Channel, one of the channels, and they were occupied by the Germans during the war. She learns about this literary and potato peel pie society that they began in order to kind of make life bearable while they were occupied by the Germans, and she becomes super obsessed with like the island and the society, and she decides she wants to write her next book about these people. So she ends up going to the island and meeting a hilarious cast of characters. Juliet herself is also such a great character. Like, I really love her. There's a love triangle in here. She has two different men who low-key love her, and I'm like, where's that energy in my life? I don't know. It's fine. But this book is hilarious, it's heartwarming, it's heartbreaking. It's just a complete gem. It's a gem of a book. I talk about it all the time. It's probably one of my favorite books of all time. I would love to reread it for the first time. So if you read it for the first time, really if you read any of these books for the first time, let me know because I want to live through you. Okay, last but not least, and I think this is the book that if I had to choose to read one book for the first time, it would probably be this one, even though I loved all the other ones. But it is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I remember reading this book and being so absolutely drawn in by the world and by the characters that I was just shooketh. This book made me appreciate really great writing, really great world building, and as I was reading this book and as I finished this book, I was like, I want to write a book because I want to do this. I don't actually really feel like I'll ever write a book. Maybe I will. Who knows? But this book made me feel that way. You know when you read a book and you're like, that was amazing, like I wish I could do something like that? That's how I felt about this one. So this is a YA fantasy book, but I mean, okay, I don't even like to say it's YA because the main character is like 19. And so the other characters are a little younger, but I feel like adults would like this as much as a YA would. But it follows a guy, a 19-year-old guy named Laszlo Strange, and he has always been obsessed with this lost city called Weep. And he works in these libraries and these archives, and he spends so many years trying to figure out as much as he can about the city and learning the language. And one day, this clan of like legendary warriors from the city just roll up at his library and they're like, hey y'all, we need some help. We're having a problem. And they want to recruit all of these academic types to come with them. So Laszlo rolls up on the scene and he starts talking in their language, and they're like, what the damn hell? Because there's really no way for him to have learned this language, but he did. And he's able to secure a spot going back to this lost city, and basically you follow him entering the city and then figuring out what is going on with the city and what is the big problem that they've been facing for years. It's got a wonderful romance aspect to it, and it's just, I remember the world building and just the general vibes of the entire thing being like, wow. Unlike anything I've ever read before, it draws me in, it makes me want more, and I would just love to experience that for the first time. Those are the books that I would sell my soul to read again for the first time. Have you read any of them? If you read any of them, let me know and tell me what your experience was like reading it for the first time, because I want to know. I want to know. Comment down below what book you would like to read again for the first time, having no prior knowledge or context, because I feel like this is a struggle that many readers feel, is like loving a book, but every time you reread it, you're like, I know what's gonna happen. I wish that I could read it again for the first time. But luckily, we will never run out of books to read for the first time, and that is the beautiful thing that we should remember. Okay, sure, I'll never be able to read those 6 books again for the first time, but what about all these that I haven't read? Thanks for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you did, and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me in the future. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Peace.